Hello, good evening. Thank you for joining us for Congresswoman Murphy's tax season information session. My name is Kyle Thorpe, and I'm a constituent advocate for Congresswoman Murphy. Tonight, you will hear from the Congresswoman, followed by representatives of the Internal Revenue Service, the Taxpayer Advocate Service, and the AARP. Following their presentations, you will have the opportunity to ask questions of these representatives. Now, I would like to introduce Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to everyone who has joined us today. I'm Congresswoman Stephanie Murphy, and I represent Seminole County and part of Orange County in the U.S. House of Representatives. I really hope that you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy during this pandemic. You know, your health is the single most important thing. Please keep doing everything you can to protect yourself, the people you love, and our community. Because there have been so many changes to the tax code over the past few months, and especially with the American Rescue Plan that was just signed into law a few days ago by President Biden, I wanted to organize this information session so that you can hear directly from experts to answer any questions you might have during this tax filing season, which I know is rapidly coming upon us. And I want to make sure that every constituent is aware and able to take advantage of all the new or altered tax credits and economic support recently enacted. You know, it's been almost exactly a year since Congress passed the first COVID-19 related legislation to address the pandemic. And since then, we've seen 3 major bills become law, including the American Recovery Plan Act that was signed just last week. There are too many provisions and important resources provided by all of these bills to go over in one evening, which is why tonight we're going to focus on what might be the most important and timely ones for you as you navigate this tax season. Things like the latest round of stimulus checks and changes in unemployment benefits. But before I dive into those, I should mention a bipartisan provision I authored and have been focused on since last March, and I'm quite proud of it. It's called the Employee Retention Tax Credit, or the ERTC. And it basically gives businesses financial support if they retain or rehire workers rather than laying them off. In other words, it helps businesses who help their workers stay connected to their jobs. And it's been estimated that this provision will help keep 13 million workers tethered to their jobs and therefore their employer-sponsored health insurance. And I'm now working to educate businesses and CPAs and others about this credit so that they can use it and it helps as many people as possible. So if you are a business owner or want to learn more or have questions about the ERTC, please contact my office. As you probably know, President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan Act into law last Thursday. And what it does is it provides $1.9 trillion in health and economic support. And let me just give you a few highlights of this plan. There will be a third round of economic support checks in the amount of $1,400 for individuals earning below $75,000 and joint filers earning below $150,000. Payments will then begin to phase down with eligibility ending for individuals earning more than $80,000 and joint filers earning more than $160,000. It's been reported that some accounts already started receiving this money last Friday. There will also be an extension through September 6th of the $300 in weekly unemployment benefits. So if you received unemployment insurance benefits in 2020, the bill will exempt the first $10,200 of those benefits from federal income taxes for households making less than $150,000 a year. So you're not going to have to pay taxes on that. There are also major expansions of the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, and these are refundable credits. And so what that means is that they'll lower your federal tax liability and could even result in you getting a check from the IRS if the amount of your credit exceeds your preliminary tax liability. These credits will also be extended to Puerto Rico and other U.S. territories. This is something that I've fought very hard for, to have equality for the territories. We've also instructed the Treasury Department to establish a program for making periodic advance payments of the child tax credit. So parents shouldn't have to wait until the end of the year to get this much needed support for their kids. And speaking of children, there's also a child and dependent care tax credit that helps working families meet expenses related to their care. So last Congress, I had introduced this legislation to make this credit refundable and more generous. And so happy to see it here in this package. In the American Recovery Plan, we're going to help eligible families meet their child care needs by providing a fully refundable tax credit for up to 50% of the first $16,000 in child care expenses for a family with 2 children. Expanding this credit creates a fairer access to this tax benefit, and it makes childcare more affordable for families, which is critically important in this moment. We've also secured a major win for students. So for the next 5 years, almost all student loans that are forgiven by the lender will not carry an income tax liability. These are just a few examples of the provisions that I expect will have an immediate impact on helping our community get through this economic challenge. And I know that other speakers will address further these topics in more detail. As we go through this pandemic and recovery together, my sincere hope is that my office and I can continue to serve as a source of stability, providing you with accurate and timely information and helping you and your family weather this health and economic storm. It was really important for me to hold this event in light of the myriad of changes that the recent American Rescue Plan has introduced to an already hectic and complicated tax filing season. And so this evening, we have 3 amazing panelists with vast knowledge of tax and IRS issues. You'll hear from Kevin Mckeon of the Internal Revenue Service, Yvette Britt from the Taxpayer Advocate Service, and Rosa Angelica Mamie with the AARP. Each panelist is going to provide a quick presentation, and then we're going to move into the Q&A portion of this event. And please remember that you can always contact my office directly at 888-205-5421. That's 888-205-5421, or email me through my website at murphy.house.gov. And with that, I just would like to thank you all for joining us tonight and reintroduce Kyle Thorpe for the next portion of.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Congresswoman. I would like to remind everyone that you will have the opportunity to ask questions of the representatives following their presentations. Please use the Q&A function to have your question read aloud. Now, I'd like to introduce Kevin Mckeon from the Internal Revenue Service.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Thank you very much, Congressman Murphy, for inviting us and doing this presentation for your constituents. And actually, thank you as well for all that good information you gave about the tax filing season and the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. So we really want to just kind of go over briefly the latest in the tax season. And as the Congresswoman said, the American Rescue Plan was just passed last week. And so for our part in IRS, we've announced that the 3rd round of the economic impact payments since COVID started are going to be starting to get out there. We are sending the first batch by direct deposit, and some people probably might have even seen them in their bank accounts this weekend. And we're going to continue paying most of them, the payments through direct deposit, but we will be sending additional batch of payments through the mail as a check or debit card. And but again, the vast majority of the payments will be by direct deposit. And as was the case with the first and second economic impact payments, no action is needed by most taxpayers. The payments will be automatic in many cases, like the first and second round in 2020. A key tool that folks can use is the Get My Payment tool on irs.gov to check the payment status of the 3rd stimulus payment. Now, as Congresswoman Murphy said, In general, most people will get $1,400 for themselves. And also this time, it's a much higher amount for each of their qualifying dependents, and that will be $1,400 for each of qualifying dependents. Most, again, people will receive the money without having to take any action. And some people are already seeing the money already. So because the payments are automatic for most eligible people, contacting either financial institutions or the IRS on payment timing, that's not going to speed up the arrival of those checks. Social Security and other federal beneficiaries will generally receive the third economic impact payment the same way as they do their regular benefits. A payment date for this group will be announced shortly. The third round of economic impact payments will be based on the taxpayer's latest processed tax return from either 2020 or 2019. And this includes anyone who successfully registered online at irs.gov using the agency's non-filer tool last year, or alternatively submitted a special simplified tax return to the IRS. If the IRS has received and processed the taxpayer's 2020 return, we'll make calculation based on that return. And again, we're going to automatically send the EIP-3 to those who didn't file a return but received Social Security retirement, survivor or disability benefits, railroad retirement benefits, SSI or VA benefits. Again, similar to the first two economic impact payments. Okay, so let's switch over to the tax filing season, which started a few weeks ago, and we're in the full swing with the tax filing season. IRS expects to process more than 150 million tax returns this year. One thing folks can do to help them file is they can securely access their IRS account information via the online account feature on irs.gov. And you can see the amount of any economic payments received on that feature. And it takes a few minutes to register, but you can do that on irs.gov. The key thing in terms of filing this year, as it usually is, but even more so this year, is to avoid the pandemic paper delays. Since COVID, we've had a lot of problems processing paper returns because we had to close down some of our centers for a short while for health reasons. They are back open and they're working through the backlog, but still, it's best to e-file your return and use direct deposit to get your refund. And for those taxpayers who haven't previously used e-file, it's best to use it this year, and you can do it by using a tax professional. You can use it through IRS Free File program or other commercial tax prep software. And also you can go to one of the volunteer tax help sites that we're going to hear about later. Paper returns and paper checks will take even longer this year to process. So as much as you can, use e-file and e-payments. Now, those people who did not receive EIP-1 or EIP-2, the first two economic impact payments, if they qualify for it, they're going to be able to claim those credits, claim those payments as a recovery rebate credit, even if they're not required to file a tax return for 2020. But you have to file a 2020 tax return. And again, those are for people who, for most people, got the two economic impact payments. But if you didn't get them and you qualify, you can do so by claiming the recovery rebate credit when you file your 2020 tax return. And you would need to do so even if you don't normally have to. I mentioned IRS Free File. That's a way to file your return for free through the partners that IRS has. It's for taxpayers with income of $72,000 or less. They can use the Free File program, and you go on irs.gov to access that. For the military service members, families, and some veterans, we have a program called MilTax, or Military One Source Tax, and they provide free online software for eligible individuals and 3 state returns for free. So military members and families and some vets can use mill tax. The free tax preparation in local communities, again, that's the VITA program and the tax counseling for the elderly. And I know we have our representative of the AARP here with us that can talk more about that, I'm sure. Couple of things to remember in terms of reporting income. We know that a lot of people may have engaged in the gig economy. And what that is activity where people earn income by providing on-demand work, services, or goods. And often it's through a digital platform. So if you worked on in the gig economy, you do need to report that income and file your return. IRS.gov is the best place to go to get help. There's details about filing, payment, where the VITA and tax counseling for the elderly sites are. So that's a great resource. As Congresswoman Murphy mentioned, the unemployment, there was a change with the new law that was just passed regarding the taxability of unemployment. So for people who've already filed a return and have included their unemployment that they received in 2020 on their tax return already, we're asking that people hold off on sending in an amended return to adjust the taxability of their return on that unemployment law that was just passed. So we should have more information out on that very soon, but we don't think, we're not sure about how it's going to go, but we're asking that they not do an amended return at this time. And that would normally be a way to correct situations on the tax return. But for this purposes, we're doing our best to see what we can do to avoid having people do that, because it's extra work for them, for one thing. So, and that's really, part of the new law. The Congresswoman mentioned several other provisions, including the expanded child tax credit. We will have more information out on that, but right now, we don't have full guidance on that because, again, we just got the law as of last week. So, again, basically, if you're due an economic impact payment that you didn't get for the first or second time, you have the recovery rebate credit to use on your tax return. The $1,400, which is the third economic impact payment, that's just starting to go out. Check the Get My Payment tool for more information. And, it'll be going out automatic. Most people will not have to do anything with it. If for some reason people, as we know, the deadline is April 15th, and if you cannot file by April 15th, please get an extension of time to file. And you can find how to do it. It's very easy to do that with software or information from IRS.gov. You do need to make a payment of the amount of taxes you owe, but that will get you into October 15th. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Kyle. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I want to remind everyone that you will have the opportunity to ask questions of the representatives following their presentations. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom, or if you're watching live on Facebook, please comment your question below the video and someone will get it over to me. Next, I'd like to introduce Yvette Britt of the Taxpayer Advocate Service.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Congresswoman Murphy, and thank you, Kyle, for the invite. And I'm just going to hit on just a few little areas. So when you're filing your tax return, you make sure that you are using your actual W-2 and not your pay stubs. A lot of people, they're in a rush and they use that, and their return refund will get snagged by IRS. IRS has a unit. We call it RIVO. It's R-I-V-O. It's the Return Integrity Verification Operations. And what they do, they match up the information from your W-2 and your tax return to the information that was reported by the payers of that income. They do this to ensure that accurate returns are filed and processed, and to help identify fraudulent returns before refunds are issued. So you don't want to be snagged there. Otherwise, you may be visiting our office. Make sure, as Kevin said, if you can electronically file, please do use that option. IRS is still backlogged. I think when they came back from their shutdown, there was like 13 million on pieces of paper, and that could have been returns. It could have been notices where people are replying to something that IRS received, or it could be a check. Right now on their website, they're still, even though they're up and running, it's saying that they're still backlogged to July 15th, 2020, and that's for last year's information. Again, if you did not receive your EIP 1 or 2, and you need to file a return and you normally don't file, you will have to file their tax return. You're going to claim that as a recovery rebate credit on your tax return, and it'll go on line 30. There's worksheets on the package to help you arrive at the correct figure. Just a couple pointers on earned income tax requirements. And I'm just hitting areas that causes our office, the Taxpayer Advocate Service, to have cases, and you're contacting the Congresswoman's office because you can't get your refund, you've got a hardship, you need it, and then we're there to assist you. So as it says, earned income tax, you have to have earned income. But because of the pandemic, a lot of businesses shut down, a lot of people earned unemployment benefits. Unemployment doesn't qualify you for the earned income tax credit. But the Taxpayer Certainty and Disaster Tax Relief Act of 2020, it's allowing you to claim your earned income from 2019 on your 2020 tax return if that earned income was higher than, if the 2019 was higher than the 2020. And that'll go on line 27 of the tax return. Some common earned income tax credit errors that will snag your return is that you're claiming a child who doesn't meet residency or relationship requirements. And what is the saying? It takes a village. So you're a good person, you know, you've got a family member, church member, neighbor, someone that are, they're going through hard times right now. So you're helping out. You're maybe feeding the family, feeding the children, buying clothes, things like that. But you have to make sure that you are meeting the residency and relationship requirements. IRS doesn't have a box that you were a good person and you were part of that village that helped support that child. And I mentioned, I'm with the Taxpayer Advocate Service. Who we are an independent organization within the IRS. We're here to protect your rights as a taxpayer and to help you with tax problems that you can't resolve on your own. Congress mandated that there is at least one Taxpayer Advocate Service office in each state. In Florida, we have actually 3 Taxpayer Advocate Services offices. I'm in the Jacksonville office. We also have a Fort Lauderdale office and St. Pete office. Soon there's going to be a Tallahassee office opening, but I cover that area. If you need immediate assistance, you can go to irs.gov. At the bottom, you can connect to the link for Taxpayer Advocate Service, or you could reach out to the Congresswoman's office and they do referrals to us, and so that we can assist you. Our National Taxpayer Advocate hotline number is 1-877-777-4778. Again, that is 1-877-777-4778. You will talk with someone, they'll screen it, and they'll create a case for you and bring you in so that you could get Taxpayer Advocate Service assistance if you're caught in the IRS backlog. What we do, Taxpayer Advocate Service, we work in two main ways. We help you all with individual IRS problems, and we also make recommendations for big picture items such as systemic changes at the IRS in tax laws. How do we help you? Once you're screened and a case is created for you, you're assigned a case advocate. They will work with you through the process. They explain how the process works. They will stay with you until your inquiry is resolved. And that's like when you call IRS, you get someone and then you still have a question, you call back again and you get a different person each time. When you come to our office, we'll work with you through the whole process. If you want to know more about Taxpayer Advocate Service, again, you can go to irs.gov, link at the bottom, connect you to the Taxpayer Advocate Service website. Our National Taxpayer Advocate also has a blog, or we're on social media. You can reach us at Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube. And so a lot of people have never heard of our organization, and that kind of makes me happy because that means that your interactions with IRS have been going reasonably well. But just remember, if you need assistance with the IRS, that we at the Taxpayer Advocate Service, we are your voice at the IRS. And I'm gonna turn it back to you, Kyle.
Thank you, Yvette. I just want to remind everyone that if you want to queue your question for the Q&A portion of the event later on, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom panel or in the comment section of your Facebook Live. Next, I'd like to introduce Rosa Angelica Mamie from the AARP.
Hi, everyone. I'm really thrilled to be here, and I want to thank Congresswoman Murphy and Kyle and my colleagues here. So yes, I am with Aarp Foundation Tax Aid. I'm going to actually pull up a presentation for you all to take a look at as I'm talking to kind of tell you who we are. So you heard one of my fellow speakers here talk about Aarp Foundation Tax Aid and Free Tax Service. We are actually the nation's largest volunteer-based free tax prep service. We do get funding from IRS through the VITA program and TCE, tax counseling for the elderly. Volunteers are trained and IRS certified every year. We provide assistance nationwide. And typically, if you've heard of us before, we have been an in-person free service, but obviously a lot of people have pivoted in terms of how they deliver their services, and Tax Aid is not any different. So the way we're available is now virtually and in person where it's safe to be in person. And it's really based on a few variables: the COVID spread, volunteer availability, taxpayer location. And all service models this year are by appointment only, as you can imagine, as opposed to what we've done in the past, which would include walk-in or appointment. So let me just show you quickly here the different models. So essentially, there's a few buckets. In person, so that's kind of our traditional in-person service. Again, these are all now with appointments, but with physical distancing, safety measures in place. We also do low contact and drop off, where the taxpayer interacts with the tax aid volunteer in one or two really short in-person meetings to exchange documents. There's also contact free. That's our totally virtual format, where the exchange of documents is all done safely electronically. And there's also self-prep, where the volunteer is not doing the prep for you, but they're coaching you as a taxpayer through the process of filing your own taxes using software. So that's where we've kind of pivoted to try and have different options for folks during this unusual time. How to find us? So if you go to aarpfoundation.org/taxaid, you'll find a brand new website there where it gives you a couple of buckets to choose from. You can see a bucket that says, and you click on it, that says, prepare my own taxes, or one that says, get help preparing my taxes. So the getting help is when a volunteer will help you. Prepare my own taxes is when a volunteer will show you where you can get the software to do that. You can also email us with questions at taxaid@aarp.org. And then we also have the phone number 888-AARP now. That's 888-227-7669. And again, we are the largest free tax prep service, but we do have limitations because of COVID in terms of how we're available and where we're available, kind of like all the other service functions that you see right now. So I'm going to turn it back over to Kyle, but I'm glad to answer any questions around free tax service and what we and some of the my other colleagues are doing kind of in this field. Kyle?
Thank you, Rosa. We'll now move into the Q&A portion of tonight. We gathered your questions when you first signed up for this event, but please feel free to add questions to the Q&A function below at the bottom of your Zoom, and then also below the video if you're watching on Facebook. Our first question is from Susan. I'm going to assume she's asking about the Economic Impact Payment 3. She says, hello, if you make more than the limits but have dependents, do you still get something for the dependents?
If you're making more, you would not get it for your dependents. If you're making over the amount to get an economic impact payment, you wouldn't get it for your dependents.
Okay, our next question is from Tamara Guy. I have filed my taxes electronically and still have not received my taxes back to this day. They filed on February 16th. I contacted a taxpayer advocate to find out that my taxes have landed in the errors department. There's nothing wrong with my taxes for them to land in the errors department. I need help and answers. Yvette, what do you think that they should do if their tax return ends up in the errors department?
There is something that snagged it, and I can't tell you what. One of the things that when I mentioned the RIVO unit, they have filters to stop fraudulent returns from being processed. So it also gets the good taxpayers, not just the fraudulent ones. I would say reach out to the your case advocate again, or you can and then ask to speak to me, ask to speak to the manager, or ask to speak to the head of the office.
Our next question is from David in Apopka. Many filers who received unemployment benefits have already filed. Will they all be required to file amended returns, or will the IRS create a special procedure for those impacted by the updated rules? And I know Kevin touched on this earlier, but I think it's extremely important that everyone hears it again.
Yes, great question, David. And the law was passed to exempt that portion of 2020 unemployment compensation up to a certain, depending on your income amount. But obviously for those people who have already filed their return for 2020 and included the amount of what was then taxable income, they are going to want an adjustment, obviously, to be made. And so IRS is asking those folks in that situation to hold off on filing a amended return to correct that situation. So I would say bear with us for a short while, and we should have more information in the very near future. And on the IRS.gov webpage, if you click on the tile for coronavirus tax relief, that's where we'll be posting that information. And we'll also be sharing it out to the news media and to Kyle and other colleagues and the partners.
Can I piggyback on that? And Kevin is saying that because we all are hoping that IRS will go in and make some changes to automatically adjust your returns without amended returns being filed. But right now, it's a lot of work to do it. So they're kind of up in the air. So again, just what Kevin said, use that website and it'll be shared.
Thanks, Yvette.
Our next question is from Joseph in Wakawa Springs. He asks, I understand that the American Rescue Plan Act included billions of dollars in tax increases. Is that true? If so, what are the increases? I think that's probably a question for Jeff. Do you feel comfortable answering that one?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question, and the short answer is yes. There were some provisions in the tax bill that did raise revenue. I would sort of not really characterize them as sort of tax increases in the traditional sense, and most of them, all three really affected businesses more than individuals. And if he's curious, the three provisions that I'm really speaking about was a repeal of a worldwide interest allocation that businesses were going to be able to use, but will not be able to use anymore. There was a sort of excessive compensation for the top earners at public companies deduction that they can no longer take. So again, only really impacting certain individuals at large publicly traded companies. And then the third piece, which I believe someone mentioned a little bit earlier, but it was the gig economy, where there's a sort of a new reporting requirement for gig workers and their sort of platforms that they're on, that they will receive 1099s sort of at a lower threshold than before. So that's sort of going to increase some compliance. But so those are sort of three main revenue raising provisions. Happy to go into more detail. Contact our office for that, but no sort of tax increases that I'm aware of on sort of individuals.
Thanks, Jeff. And just to introduce him, Jeff is our senior policy advisor for Congresswoman Murphy's office in DC. Our next question is from Felix in Sanford. His question is, what is the tax liability or rate on the stimulus check payments? What is the current income limit below which no tax filing is necessary? I think his question is, is he going to owe taxes on his economic impact payments?
Thank you, Kyle and questioner. The economic impact payments are not taxable. The first and second one were not, and the third is not. So that he doesn't have to worry about paying taxes on receiving those stimulus payments. In terms of the regular tax filing thresholds, off the top of my head, I don't recall what exactly they are, but if you have I know if you have net earnings from self-employment of $400 or more, you do have to file a return. And I'll see if I can find the other amounts, but he doesn't have to worry about paying taxes on a stimulus.
Okay, thank you. We have Richard from Winter Park. He says, I've never received my $600 check. That's EIP 2. Will I get the $1,400 check at the same time I get the $600 check?
Well, if he didn't get his $600, that's the second EIP. He can claim that on his on a 2020 tax return in terms of filing for the recovery rebate credit. So the $1,400 payments, he can check the Get My Payment tool on irs.gov to see the status of what $1,400 payment, when it will come. I just found my tax book, and in terms of the filing requirements for most people, at the end of 2020, if you were single and under 65, you have to file a return if your income was $12,400. There's a different figure for 65 and older, and if you're married filing jointly, it was $24,800. So that's all on irs.gov, by the way.
Okay, our next question comes from Sheila in Altamont Springs. Where can I get my taxes prepared at a reasonable cost since I am unemployed due to COVID? And I was hoping Rosa might be able to answer that for us.
Sure. Well, there are many free tax services available. Like I mentioned, Tax Aid, AARP Foundation Tax Aid is for low to moderate income folks. You don't have to be a member of AARP. There's not an age limit. There are also other organizations that get VITA grants that also do free tax service. And there's also the Free File Alliance. And you can go to the IRS site and there's eligibility to use different of the free file software like TurboTax or that type of thing available. But there are a lot of organizations like AARP Foundation that help with this type of service for free. aarpfoundation.org/taxaid. You can also go to irs.gov/VITA, that's V as in Victor, ITA, and look for available locations. Again, as I said at the top of the call, because of COVID, there may be limitations on the number of appointments available, but still it's worth reaching out and doing some research.
Thank you, Rosa. Our next question comes from Amit in Sanford. He says, with the multiple changes to the tax code mid-season, coupled with all the current problems and overload at the IRS, why hasn't the IRS and Treasury Department been more proactive in extending the tax season due date to June 15th, as has been advocated by many members of Congress, accounting organizations, and the AARP?
Well, we did extend the deadline last summer, I believe, until July 15th. So we did it then. Why aren't we doing it now? I believe the decision was made that, it's a little bit different situation than last year in that, COVID, the situation is maybe more improving. Maybe there are more services out there. And so the deadline again is April 15th. If folks need an extension, it's very easy to get a tax extension, and that'll get them into October 15th. So that's kind of where we're at. That's been a policy decision made at headquarters with Treasury. So that's where we're at this point.
Thank you, Kevin. Our
Sure.
next question comes from Ruth in Winter Park. When will we know if the suspension of required minimum distributions is maintained for 2021? Kevin, have you heard anything about required minimum distributions?
For 2021, I have not heard that that was going to be not required. So, but RMDs for required minimum distributions, were under the CARES Act, they were not required, I believe. So, but for that was for 2020 only, as far as I know. So, for 2021, I haven't heard of any changes to that people would not have to make their RMDs.
Thank you. We have a question from Kristen through the Q&A function in Zoom. She says, thank you for this space to listen and take our questions. I submitted a name change request in March 2020 upon being married. Which name do I use on my 2020 filing, as I have not been able to reach Social Security to confirm the status of my request? Also, my husband has not received his 2019 tax return. Who do we contact about that? Kristen, about your husband and his tax return, I'd be happy to help him. If you want to reach out to our office and ask for me, happy to help you.
That's what I was going to suggest too, for them to reach you, Kyle, and you reach out to us, and then we can maybe create a case and be able to assist her.
Does anyone know about her name change? If she it hasn't confirmed through SSA that it has been changed, what should she do?
Well, we rely on what's on Social Security's records when the return is processed. So if she submitted it through SSA, not sure why they weren't, she wasn't able to get verification, but I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, Yvette, if she submitted it already back in March, that's almost a year ago, I would say she should use her new name, assuming that Social Security has it, because that's what we rely on.
Yeah, I like that answer too, but if she's gonna reach out to Kyle, then we can check both of them at the same time. Just to make sure that we don't want it to get tied
That'd
up.
be great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
I have a question from Judy in Altamont Springs. She says, we claimed our 43-year-old son as a handicapped dependent in 2018 and 2019. We contribute all of his support, yet we did not receive a stimulus check for him. He has also been a taxpayer in prior years before 2018. I don't understand the exemption law or why he hasn't received a stimulus check. We are both a retired couple and struggle to support the three of us. Can we claim the prior non-payments on our tax return this year?
Okay, I believe for the first EIPs, the EIP 1 and 2, you could not claim adult dependents. But for EIP 3, I believe they did make a change and they added adult dependents as people who would get the stimulus. So I don't think, she's not going to be able to go back and get EIP 1 and 2 because the law wasn't written in her favor to that. But she should get the EIP 3 for that adult dependent.
Would she just file on her taxes, or is that something she'll get automatically?
Well, she should get the EIP 3 automatically, but if she doesn't, there will be a mechanism for her to claim that.
Okay. We have a question from Rick in Oviedo. Our income in 2020 was much lower than 2019, but I haven't filed my taxes yet. We qualify for a payment, I'm assuming he means the economic impact payments, based on 2020 income, but not 2019. Will we be able to get a payment after the taxes are filed?
I think so, yes. I mean, if they're eligible for it if their income declined, is that what he's saying, declined in 2020?
Right. So they didn't get the payments based on their 2019 income. But due to 2020, they did drop below those thresholds.
Okay, probably, we're going to look at the 2020 income if they filed the return for that. And it sounds like he or she might be eligible. But the bottom line is, if they don't get it right now, like we do have the recovery rebate credit for the first EIP and the second, there will be a mechanism to get it. I don't know what that will be at this point, but it sounds like he would be eligible for the EIP 3 if his income is below the threshold.
And Jeff, EIP 1 and 2, those were both based on 2020 income, correct? So he should be able to just claim it as a recovery rebate credit.
Correct. Both for 2020.
Okay. So yeah, so file your taxes for 2020 and you should be able to claim it. Our next question is, yep.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like his income in 2019 was too high, and that's why he didn't get it.
Right.
And if it has changed, lowered in 2020, I do believe he will get it. I'm not sure about automatic, though. That's the only thing I would say.
Yeah, he probably has to file his tax return in order to get it.
Right.
Yes, I agree with you.
We have a question from Charles in Orange County. Do the current executive orders in place by local government and the state governments still allow for businesses operating in Florida to claim the employee retention tax credit?
I can give a first pass, which would be, if there is a local shutdown order, that would qualify you under the forced closure provision of the employee retention tax credit, but you are also eligible to claim it if you had a reduction in revenues, at least in 2021 for the credit of 20% or more as compared to a 2019 quarter. So you don't need to rely solely on the shutdown orders to qualify if you've seen that sort of revenue decline.
Okay, our next question comes from Morgan again. Oh, Jeffrey's answering that. So Kimberly asked, the tax gentleman said to hold off filing an amended tax return for unemployment if we already filed our 2020 taxes. When will we know how to handle the tax credit we missed out on now for this year's taxes with the new unemployment insurance tax law? I know we've answered it twice, but I want to make sure that everyone knows, don't file amended returns just yet. Wait for IRS guidance. Kevin, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree exactly what you said. And also, let me say that amended returns take longer for regular tax returns to process. And so that's, if you can avoid it at all, I would not want you to file an amended return. And we do hope to have some guidance out in the very near future as to what avenue you should proceed to fix that problem. But thanks for asking.
Because,
Yeah,
Yvette, do you have anything to add?
well, I was going to say amended returns can take up to 4 months to process, and it's possible that IRS will already have the fix. And so if they send in an amended return and IRS is fixing it, it's going to snag in the computer and they're going to delay it even longer. So if they can, like you said, if they can hold off, please do.
Our next question comes from Steve Stewart. He says, my child earned some money in 2020. What is the criteria for them to file their own return so they can get the new stimulus? It seems in our family's best interest to not claim the child so they can get the bigger stimulus. Does anyone want to take that one? It gets to when and how you should be claiming your children on your taxes.
I think Kevin's got the filing requirement handy, didn't you?
Yes, I have the chart in the
Yeah.
1040, the actual paper 1040 book. Anybody remember that? Everybody files on computer now, but yeah, it's basically, it's in terms of the income that the child would have. And a child that we're presuming they're going to be single, they'll need to file a return if their gross income was at least $12,400.
Did you want to touch on when you should claim a child versus letting them file their own taxes?
Well, they changed. Yeah, things changed a little bit a couple of years ago with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So, the standard deduction was greatly increased. And basically, if they're using tax software, they can just file it both, or they can calculate it both ways. And whichever comes out more in their favor, they would go ahead and file that way in accordance, if they are dependents, they, do need to meet the dependent criteria in terms of providing support and other factors.
Okay, thank you. We have a question. I am on disability and do not have to file taxes. How am I supposed to receive the stimulus payment? So I'm assuming this is someone who doesn't normally file taxes and didn't get EIP 1 or 2 automatically.
They need to
Okay,
file a
so
return.
yeah, it seems strange though that they're on disability and never got EIP 1 and 2, because folks on Social Security disability, at least, that was an automatic payment. Maybe there was some particular situation for that individual, but absolutely, like Yvette says, if they don't get it through the normal process, the normal automatic process, they will need to file a return. Rosa, do you have any thoughts on that?
There we go, off mute. No, not really anything to add. Yeah.
Okay, great.
We have a question. I filed an amended return for 2019 months ago, but I haven't yet received my refund. Can you guys shed any light on what's going on with amended returns that have been filed many months ago?
So did they file it electronically? So that's one question. So if they did it paper and they filed it around July, a due date, IRS is still backlogged and working July 15th, 2020, all that, all those past due returns, correspondence checks. That's the date they're still working on. And they've still got millions of pieces of paper, whether it's a return or response to a notice or payments, they're still working in the millions to get those resolved.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
just to add to that, and it's, we're really talking about 2019 returns here that are in that backlog. And I think the last figure I heard was somewhere in the neighborhood between 4 and 5, maybe 4 to 6 million of those. Some of those are all like Yvette said in the beginning, they're in a special unit for verification. So we may have sent out letters to those taxpayers, some of those taxpayers. But if you're in that situation, that unfortunate situation, you can still go ahead and file your 2020 tax return. You don't have to wait for that 2019. So you don't have to hold up on your 2020.
Along that same point, Diane Holmes asks, I thought amended returns cannot be filed electronically. Is that wrong?
They changed the law last year for the current, for the 2019, and they can do file electronic 1040Xs, amended returns.
Can we just one more time go over where people can go to get help filing their taxes? I have a feeling this year we're gonna have a lot of first time in a long time tax filers. Rose, is that something you can touch on?
Yep. Yeah, so again, speaking about Aarp Foundation Tax Aid, which is the program I work with, go to aarpfoundation.org/taxaid. Again, tax aid, like other programs out there, is a free service for low to moderate income folk. Don't let the AARP name scare you. It's available for all ages, and you don't have to be a member of AARP. You can also look for other organizations or other tax sites at the IRS website at irs.gov/VITA, V as in Victor, ITA. And there are other organizations out there. Again, just a caveat that because of COVID, that there may be some limitations in terms of where service can be provided or whether the service is done in person or virtually, just for safety's sake, but it is worth doing that research.
And then this will be our last question. It's from Victoria in Winter Springs. She says, my son has not received any of the stimulus monies, I think in part because we claimed him in 2018. In 2019, he started a business and we no longer claim him, but he didn't get the first or second round of payments that went out. Now with the third one going out, is he still getting the message that payment status is not available when he checks online? How can he get the payments?
I would say he needs to file, has he filed his returns for 2019 or 2020? If not, I would highly recommend he do that. And if he's eligible for either EIP, if he's eligible for EIP 1 and 2, he can claim that as a recovery rebate credit on his 2020 return.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for tonight. Please do not hesitate to reach out to Congresswoman Murphy's office if we can ever be of any assistance. You can reach our office at any time at 888-205-5421, or online at murphy.house.gov. I can be reached directly through that phone number. As for Kyle, I handle all Internal Revenue Service issues for the Congresswoman. Again, that's 888-205-5421 or online at murphy.house.gov. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say?
I just appreciate the invite and thank you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thanks, Kyle, and go to irs.gov to get all the help you need with your taxes.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Have a good evening. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I know.